Morning. My name's Johnny, and I'm an alcoholic. I want to thank you all for that meeting last night. It was very informative. I'm one of those people who believe a base of operations is one of the most strongest things that you can have in Alcoholics Anonymous is a base of operations, a home group. And the reason of it is if you're any type of an AA member at all, you do get out and about and go other places and see things. And if you run into newcomers, like I give the opportunity to, and some of the guys that I sponsor get the opportunity because we go to a lot of different meetings, it's nice to tell them where you're going to be at a certain time and to be there. You know, I have people come to me and say, where is this place? This big book group in Bellflower. I tell them, this is Bellflower. You ought to see the looks they get on their face, like, oh, God, that's deep. And I said, just come over there on Monday, I'm there. We have a bad habit. We get there early and stay late. But we're in Southern California. Basically, the book says if we have completed the first 9 steps, the promises of Alcoholics Anonymous do not come into play until after the 9th step. They just don't. I mean, we go back to that same theme that I've been talking to you about all weekend. Bill has assumed now that we're here, where he was when these things took place in his life. He said, we are painstaking about this phase of our development. We will be amazed before we're halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We could insert the word depression if you want to. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Now, if this hasn't happened to you, you haven't done it up to this point. I repeat that over and over and over. If you're an alcoholic of my type, and this hasn't happened to you, and it isn't a constant in your life, you have skipped and missed something along the way. You've taken some kind of a shortcut. You maybe got some wrong directions or some wrong information, but you should be in a position like this. After your 9th step, these things should be a part of your life, or at least a part of your memory. This phase of pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization will not be there, so self-sleeping will slip away. I mean, there's no self-seeking anymore. There's no more getting anything. One of the greatest things that's ever happened to me in my life is that I quit looking for something. Now, I don't know where that happened, but somewhere in my early days in Alcoholics Anonymous, it dawned on me that I did not have to look for anything anymore, and my entire lifetime was spent on a search for something. My self-seeking had slipped away unbeknownst to me, not because I wanted it to, not because I thought I should, not because I was working at it, because I had done the things that Bill Wilson wrote that he did to do that for him. And it happened to me, unknowingly to me, it just seemed to happen. And as I stand here before you today, I ain't looking for nothing. I found everything I need here. I found a way to live in a world that I don't believe in and don't belong to, no matter what the circumstances, with some degree of comfort, most of the time. The only discomfort in my life is when my self-centeredness seeks back into me. That's the only time there's any discomfort in my life. There's never any discomfort in my life as long as I'm doing selfish or selfless acts and trying to live the way I believe God wants me to live. Try to act like one of God's kids doing his things for free and for fun. It's just an amazing situation. And so when I read these promises in this book and I hear them read, I can assure you that every single one of those promises has happened to me. Every single one of them. And there ain't nothing special about me. God didn't open up the clowns and smack down and miraculously save me and pluck me from the sea of death, that he can't do it for anybody else. I'm just one of his kids. That's what I've learned here. I'm not the kid. I'm not the crown prince. I'm not the king waiting for the throne. I'm just one of the kids. What I am basically is I'm a servant in my Father's house. Basically, that's all I am. There was a story a long time ago about the Prodigal Son, and that was after he'd lived around in the pig pen and blew his inheritance, he went back to see his dad, and he told him he just wanted to be a servant. And his dad said, hush, and killed the fatted calf and gave him a ring, and my son has returned. That's the way I feel. But I didn't ever return anywhere because I had never been anywhere, but I always knew there was some place that I should be. My entire life, I always knew I was out of kilter, that I was always somewhere where I shouldn't be, and there was always some place I should have been, but I didn't know where it was, and I did not have a highway to walk on or steps to get there. I didn't have the vehicle or the information or the structure or the pathway to follow, because my pathways and my followings and my subways were elevators leading into hell. I had no way of knowing, but I knew, always knew, from a child sitting at my grandmother's knee, that there was something, some place for me to go. So I began my search. I began to search for this freedom and happiness that comes with doing these things, what these promises were just read. And they happened to me not because I'm anything special. It happened to me because I believed in a book called Alcoholics Anonymous, and I saw the examples of the people who did the things. I saw the alcoholics who had recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. Although I didn't understand them, and I didn't think it was ever going to be possible for me to feel that way, everything that's happened to me up to this particular point in my life has been hindsight. It's happened without me knowing about it. Because I haven't ever worked for a birthday. I haven't ever worked for sobriety. I don't believe the word work has anything to do with it. Work denotes struggle to me. I don't have to struggle for this thing. It's as natural for me as to breathe in and out. Because this is the way God wants his children to live. And the book says, this thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we should continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commenced this way of living as we cleaned up the past. There it is again. The amends. As we vigorously commence this way of living as we cleaned up the past. We don't clean it up. We're going to have to live with it. We have entered the world of the Spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for a lifetime. So you can't spend 30 days or 90 days in a treatment facility and have this thing down pat. It just doesn't seem to work. We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is the code. And here's a line in the book Alcoholics Anonymous that I love more than anything else. We have ceased to fight anything or anyone, even alcohol, for by this time sanity will have returned. Isn't that an amazing statement? Sanity will have returned to insane people. What is sanity? There must be some type of calmness, some things in those promises that pastor. But it also says in this step that it's easy to let up on a spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. And then Bill gives us a severe warning. We're headed for trouble if we do, because alcohol is a subtle foe. It says what we really have is a daily reprieve. That means I got today. I ain't sober and I ain't peace with myself because I've been sober. Keeping you awake back there? Once upon a time, I said to one of the guys I sponsor about this daily reprieve, and being the type of smart aleck he is, he went out and got the dictionary. You got to be careful when you sponsor people like that. They bring you back information you ain't got. You feel kind of stupid. He says, you know what a reprieve is, sponsor? And I said, no. He said, it's a stay of execution from a death sentence. I watched one the other day in the newspapers. He was in Northern California, matter of fact. Gave that guy a reprieve from a death sentence. And basically that's what we got, because every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? That's the prayer. How can I best serve thee? Not what can I get? Where can I go? How high can I achieve? Now where will I be? Blah, 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 blah. It's how can I best serve thee? What can I do today? What can I do today to help another individual in this thing called life? As much has already been said about receiving strength and inspiration from Him who has all knowledge and power. If we have been carefully following directions, we have begun to sense the flow of the Spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God-conscious. We have begun to develop this vital sixth sense. We must go further, and that needs more action. And more action is step 11, suggests prayer and meditation. Now you'll notice very specifically a lot of people have that mixed up. Today, in a lot of places, they think it says sought through prayer and medication. How many people in this room have been addicted to pain medication or antidepressants who are no longer on them? Stand up. All of you stand up. Now, the next time you run into one of these idiots who says that can't happen, I hope you stand forward. Okay, you can sit down. Rest my case. No debate to that. You cannot debate that. I haven't taken any, so I can't speak from experience. These people can. And my experience with it is knowing people like these who've done it. That's my experience. So it doesn't seek through prayer and medication. It seeks through prayer and meditation. It tells it exactly how to do it. It tells it exactly what we're supposed to do in our book. So we retire at night, we constructively review our day. We're resentful, selfish. And what happens to you over a period of time, or at least what's happened to me over a period of time? When I was new in Alcoholics Anonymous, when I started to feel good, it bothered me. Because I was so used to feeling bad, I didn't know what feeling good was. And so when I started to feel good, I kept saying, oh, Jesus, what's going to happen now? You know, you hear jackasses, unknowing jackasses, make all kinds of statements. Well, you're on pink cloud. You're going to come down the ground sooner or later. Oh, yeah. And that little guy and little Admiral running around with a little cloud hanging over his head all day long. Now, after 40-some years, the complete opposite happens. Now, when I feel bad, I know it's something I'm doing. But the routine of a home group and close communication with a sponsor, a strong sponsor. My wife is not my sponsor. My sponsor is my sponsor. My girlfriend's not my sponsor. The guys I sponsor are not my sponsor. My preacher's not my sponsor. My doctor's not my sponsor. My sponsor is my sponsor. My sponsor is not emotionally involved with me. My sponsor is not trying to produce something out of me that I can't do, or make me something that I don't want to be. My sponsor wants me to be me and be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous and a productive member of this society called Alcoholics Anonymous, and following his example. My sponsor has two of the greatest qualities it calls for, the only qualities that I need for a sponsor. He's sober longer than I am, and he's busier than I am. And if he ever loses one of those traits, he will no longer be my sponsor. And the reason is very simple. I am not going to follow somebody who is not doing what he tells me to do. I am not going to follow somebody who will not show me what to do next by his own actions. Not at all. Because I'm egotistical enough and self-centered enough and sober long enough where I don't need to follow somebody who's not doing it. Not at all. And that's very simple. There is no way in the world that you can get to the promises in Alcoholics Anonymous without a strong sponsor. They won't take you there. Basically, a lot of people can't take you there because you can't take somebody someplace you ain't been. I mean, that's simple as I know how to be it. If you've never been through the first 9 steps, how are you going to take somebody there? So it's very simple. And this prayer and medication, you can prayer and meditation or prayer and medication, whichever one suits you. This prayer and meditation business can sometimes get blown completely out of proportion. Completely out of proportion. My sponsor taught me how to meditate by yelling at me. He did. He said, shut up and sit down and listen at the damn meeting. I wanted to visit. I had a lot to say. Although I didn't know anything, but I had a lot to say anyhow. We all got a lot to say. Sit down and shut up, he said. In his own subtle little way, he was introducing me to a God of my very own. My meditation consistently happens to me 4 or 5 times a week, as I said in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, and have developed the common courtesy enough to listen. My sponsor told me when I was new, if I go to a meeting and I'm speaking at the meeting, it doesn't count. Because all I'm doing is listening to my own voice. He said, I have to go to meetings 3 times a week just to listen. I still do that. I have 3 meetings a week that I go to where I don't get to say a word, except grumble and complain. But nobody pays any attention to me. I founded the group. An old standing group, joke in our group, if you want anything voted down at the steering committee, have Johnny recommend it. That hurts. I know most of you haven't gotten into this shit, but when you're new in Alcoholics Anonymous and you're washing cups in the kitchen and doing all these things that everybody talked about they're doing or have done, they're saying to you, oh, look at this newcomer. You're busy. You're really doing it well. Keep up the good work. But they're really saying under their breath, better you doing it than me. If you're still doing it at 40 years sober, they say, look at that old son of a bitch. He's still trying to run everything around here. One of the sad things about it, One of the sad things about that I see today in Alcoholics Anonymous, I see a lot of people sober for a period of time who stand at podiums a lot of places, or they're quick to tell you what they got out of doing what they did when they were new. Oh man, they'll tell you about all the benefits they got from that. And I don't know what's happened to them, but over a period of time, they're not doing it anymore. And what's even more devastating to me, they don't ask the people they sponsor to do it. So I've come to a profound conclusion that if they're not doing it anymore, and the people they sponsor don't have to do it anymore, they're liars. Or they haven't gotten anything out of it. Because whatever I got out of Alcoholics Anonymous when I'm new, I want the people I sponsor to have it. Because I was given a great deal here. And so I still do essentially today the same thing I did when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous 40 some odd years ago. I go to meeting, I read the book, I try to stick my hand out and help others, and I have developed something that's almost a lost art. I've developed some common courtesy in Alcoholics Anonymous. My sponsor taught me that by yelling at me. Sit down and shut up. Take your hat off. Pay attention. Jesus. I didn't wear a hat. But he told me anyhow. He would point out people to me and say, look at that guy. Look at it. So you want to be like that? Not necessarily. Then don't do what he does. Oh. See how simple it is? You want what we have, then you do what we do. In every meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous you go to, no matter how watered down it's been or how strong it is, there are people in there who are staying sober doing certain things. Usually they're in the minority. The alcoholics in Alcoholics Anonymous today are in a micro minority. How do you like those? We got more heavy drinkers, more non-alcoholics masquerading as alcoholics in Alcoholics Anonymous today than ever before in the history of mankind. They can't be alcoholics. They very can't. If they were alcoholics, they'd be drunk. Because they do nothing here. They have no common courtesy. They have no consideration for the guy sitting next to them. They have no consideration for the image that they portray to the people who see them. I was having a meal the other day, yesterday, and I looked around, and 4 or 5 of our group of people were sitting in a room with other people who are not alcoholics. And I thought, I wonder what I would think if I wasn't in AA and I saw this group. And I probably thought this is a bunch of long-haul truck drivers. They have their hats on. They're inside, they're eating lunch. And if I had a person in my family who had a drinking problem, and I found out these were alcoholics, I don't think I'd send them there. See what I'm talking about? You are what Alcoholics Anonymous is supposed to be to the people who don't know. And I know there's times in my life when I am not the best example of Alcoholics Anonymous in the world. I know that. And my prayer is, I hope nobody takes me as an example of Alcoholics Anonymous at that moment. It's amazing to me. And so I think about that constantly in my prayer and meditation. I sit in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. A long time ago, some old man that I loved very dearly, who was the only father I've ever known, made a statement to me that has since become more important to me than anything I know of. He said that nature abhors a vacuum, but God abhors a vacuum even more under heaven and earth. He said if I could empty myself of self, I would be automatically full of God. That's what happens to me in Alcoholics Anonymous meetings when I go listen. I listen. I listen to the small, quiet voice of God. God talks to me through people. Not directly, but through people. And so my sponsor, by telling me to shut up and sit down and have some respect and consideration and common courtesy for the people around me, has taught me to communicate with a God of my very own. I didn't have to look for God. It's not a search. It's not a stretch. All I got to do is sit still and be quiet. The book Alcoholics Anonymous makes a very, very profound statement in it. It says, deep down inside of every man, woman, and child is the basic fundamental idea of God. But it can't be covered up and drowned out by self-centeredness, selfishness, and inconsideration. And that's all that separates me from complete and total disaster. My selfishness and self-centeredness, my inconsideration of other things and other people. What bothers me more than anything else in the world today is if I step on somebody's toes or I do something that's against my grain because of my selfishness or my self-centeredness. It bothers me tremendously. And somehow or other I have to do something about it. Or else I'm going to drink. And the reason I'm going to drink is very simple. I'm an alcoholic. I'm not a heavy drinker. I'm not a drug taker. I'm an alcoholic. And if you don't know the difference between a heavy drinker and an alcoholic, you better learn it real quick. Because you're going to be surrounded by more heavy drinkers than you ever will alcoholics. That's the nature of the beast. That's what John D. Rockefeller Jr. warned us about in the 1930s. That with the influx of the money into Alcoholics Anonymous and the treatment of alcoholism, we have incorporated into our fellowship 70 or 80% of it is now totally engrossed with non-alcoholics. So we've become the micro minority. And you can spot them. I mean, it's not hard to see them. They don't do anything here. They have a right to everything that goes on in AA. They do these. They don't have to do nothing. They don't have to do a thing. They just come here and eat the coffee, drink the cake, do all this other kind of stuff. I just wondered if you caught that, Peter. They don't do nothing. You can recognize them right away. They never drop anything into the basket because they don't have to. They have a right to everything that goes on here. They don't need to take steps. They don't need to sponsor anybody. They don't need to go to panels. They don't need to study the book. They don't need to do anything. And the problem with that is that they kill alcoholics. There's a story told about Northern California. There are some good things that's happened in Northern California. It's kind of hard to dig them up every once in a while, but I try. During the gold rush days and things, there was a woman running around cooking in the camp, the gold camp. Her name was Mary. And Mary was a carrier of typhoid. Mary never got sick and died with the typhoid. She just carried it. But everybody she came in contact with died. And I'm safe to say that there's a lot of typhoid Marys running around Alcoholics Anonymous. You can understand, oh, you don't have to do that. Why would you want to go do that? Why would you want to go hear somebody talk about a book for 3 days? Why don't you just go to a movie? The meeting is not that important. This is. Forget the meeting night, the committed meeting. Let's have a birthday party for Mary. Well, let's go on a trip. We don't need to go on AA. We don't want to go listen to him again. I've heard everything. I hear people say that all the time. Oh, I'm not going to go listen to Clancy. I've heard him talk before. And I said to him, how many times have you heard your favorite song? What do you mean by that, they say to me. That's what I'm saying. We need to hear it all the time. Why do we read the 5th chapter at every meeting? I mean, it's the same thing, but it puts us in a state. My sponsor said to me one time that Alcoholics Anonymous basically will do for you the same thing that a drink of alcohol does. I said, you're crazy. You're crazy. See, I used to have that kind of defiance. I know you don't, but the people down south do. I said, you're nuts. Nothing will take the place of a drink. But you know, I used to take a drink after being sober just to go. Whew. And now on Wednesday nights that I sit alongside of my sponsor at an AA meeting that I make coffee for, still making coffee. We got more sobriety in that coffee crew than they've got in some states, for Christ's sakes. The minute they start reading the 5th chapter, when they're not trying to get it over with, you know, some people read the 5th chapter like they're trying to get it over with. Like some people read the 5th chapter like it means something, and some people read it like trying to get over it, get through with it real quick. Long about the time they said, here are the steps we took, almost in unison, my sponsor and I go, I can hear him and he can hear me. That's what alcohol used to do for me. A sense of comfort and ease with taking a few drinks. The 12th step says, the promise of all promises. And Bill made the promise to us a long time ago. Told us what to talk about. He said that having had, that's past tense. Having had. He's saying to us, if we've done to this point, we have had, having had, a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. He doesn't say that we're going to get a spiritual experience just because we don't drink anymore. Having had a spiritual experience as a result of these steps. He doesn't say as a result of being one of God's blessed people or praying or doing any. As a result of these steps, we've had a spiritual experience. We try to carry this message, the message of having had something happen to me as a result of doing certain things. That's the message. And the message is born out of experience of doing certain things. That's the message. The message is not some intellectual jargon that came from somewhere else. It comes from the experience of doing certain things. Bill says we share our experience, strength, and hope. The experience is paramount on all things. The experience of the people who have been on medication, who stood up, who are no longer on medication, living decent lives, is basic experience beyond any value whatsoever that you could see. The idea of a man getting sober and staying sober who is a real alcoholic or an alcoholic of our type is experience beyond any type of comprehensive understanding except from another alcoholic who's got sober. And the message of Alcoholics Anonymous has only one purpose, is to create an identification from one alcoholic to another alcoholic. That's why non-alcoholics cannot carry the message to an alcoholic. It's why a drug addict can't do it. It's why a heavy drinker can't do it. It's why a doctor can't do it. It's why a priest can't do it. It's why anybody can't do it who is not an alcoholic. If they could, Alcoholics Anonymous would never have come into existence and it would never maintained itself. One alcoholic talking to another alcoholic about his experience will save the day. It will render the sufferer usefully whole. And there's another line in the 12th step that is misinterpreted more than anything else that I know of. To practice these principles in all of our affairs. And you'll hear time and time and time again that the steps are the principles. No, they're not. The steps are not the principles. They are the open doorways to the principles. They are the steps that will teach you the principles. And what are the principles? I talked about them already. Love and service. The promises say self-seeking will slip away. Common courtesy. Consideration for others. Honesty. They're not talking about necessarily cash register honesty. They're talking about self-honesty. The willingness to give of my time for no idea of reward. Papa used to say it's for free and for fun. The great principle. The love that we share in Alcoholics Anonymous with our bantering and our back and forth and our stand-up things and the things we do in Alcoholics Anonymous it's troublesome to people who don't understand us. The place my sponsor used to say where we laugh when we're sad and we cry when we're happy, and we call it Alcoholics Anonymous. Those are all principles. And the steps will bring them to you. The steps will give, the professor have given me, I had principles running the streets. I had principles living in penitentiaries. I had principles running in a gang. I had laws that I lived with that my life depended on me obeying those laws. And by the same token, the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous that have been installed in me by the program of Alcoholics Anonymous are the only things that are going to save my life today. They're a life-saving situation here. I either do these things or I die. Very simple. Or, what's even more frightening, I may drink and live. That scares me to death. I may drink and live. I know that doesn't seem like a hell of a lot to some people, but to an alcoholic, it's the most frightening thing that they can think about. When I was out there running the streets and doing the things that I was doing, there was no idea of a life like this. I never saw anybody who had a life like this. I never knew anybody who lived like this. Maybe my grandmother, but I didn't understand her. I thought she was a crazy old woman. But I never saw anybody. I never saw people rise out of a cesspool and stand in the sunlight. We just sunk deeper into the cesspool. But once I got the idea by this manuscript that maybe I could live some type of a decent life, I've never looked back. Everything in Alcoholics Anonymous that's in this book I have just wanted to do. It's funny. Every promise that it'd make, I just wanted them to happen. And because I want them to happen didn't mean that they happen. They happen because of the things I do. So, in a way, all these weekends are just wonderful things. You get here and people talk about AA. Some people get new perspectives in life. And a couple guys got new sobriety dates. It's just amazing what's happened. I watched some people become alcoholics. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And this is all fine and good. But you know what? You can tell me any damn thing you want to tell me here. But what I'm going to tell you is tomorrow night, on the end seat on the third row, At 5:30 or 5:45, I know everybody makes a big deal about spending 2 or 3 hours at their meeting. Seemed to be a big topic last night anyhow. I'll be sitting in my chair in my meeting in the same chair I've sat in for the last 32 years. And I can count the number of times on one hand that I've missed that meeting. That's consistency. And what I have become in there is a non-entity. I have become the assistant chair putter aware. Now that's troublesome for the founder. I'm just a member of that group. I'm just a member of the group. I ain't, I don't run anything. I told you, but the greatest compliment that was ever paid to me in Alcoholics Anonymous that I can remember was paid to me Monday night by the speaker in our meeting. And here's what he said. He said, I love coming to this meeting because it's live and full of energy. He says, Johnny founded this group 33 years ago, and he says, the great thing about Johnny is he let it run itself. What a tremendous compliment. He says, it ain't so in a lot of places. It kind of burnt me a little bit. But isn't that a compliment? Wouldn't that be a compliment to you? It is to me. I don't want people standing up telling me how wonderful I am and how much I do for them and how much I've done for everything and what I've created. That embarrasses the crap out of me. I was going to say something, but I forgot what it was. I had a senior moment. I don't know what it was. Hot flash. Maybe I should have had some of your coffee cake. That would have probably lightened up the thing. No thanks. Don't. Anyway, do yourselves a favor. Take what you found in Alcoholics Anonymous, if you found anything at all this weekend, where it belongs. Take it back to your home groups tomorrow. What you will find in a lively, enthusiastic group of Alcoholics Anonymous is one very specific little thing. In every meeting that I've ever been in, all over the world, in an enthusiastic, lively group of people, I have found one common denominator in all of it. It's called strong sponsorship. And what is strong sponsorship? To me, strong sponsorship is somebody who cares more about saving your life than they do about hurting your feelings. A strong sponsor is somebody who leads by example, not by words. My sponsor led by example. He said to me when I was new, if you do what I do, then you'll know what I do. And you can't know what you do if you don't do what I do. I'm very pleased that you allow me to come here every year and blabble on about my beliefs and my experience in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I tell you, I always go away with much more than I bring here. Because I know for a fact that there's 3 or 4 people here this weekend who have a chance of living now. That they've got some decent information about the nature of their illness. I know that because I've talked to them. So thank you for allowing me to come and be with you. And one thing I always say, and I'll always say it as long as I live, never before in the history of all mankind has this particular group of people ever been together. Never again, from this moment on, will this particular group of people ever be together again in the same place, in the same time frame. It's our little moment in time, our little moment in eternity, where we can gather up in the spirit of love and service and carry these things on with us wherever we go. Once upon a time, a friend of mine, who is dead now, wrote a pamphlet. And it's probably the best pamphlet, or the only pamphlet that I think should be in operation or written about, except for meeting directories and problems other than alcohol. It's called A Member's Eye View of Alcoholics Anonymous. And in there, he said to me, he told me about this story. It's a biblical story. It seemed like Jesus' cousin was in a dungeon, and the people came to him and said, "Are you the Messiah?" And he kept asking him, "Are you the Messiah?" And he said, he didn't answer him. And he said, "What shall I tell him?" He says, "Go out and tell him what you've seen. Tell him that you've seen the lame walk, the blind see, and the deaf hear." That describes to me an alcoholic. We can't hear because we know too much. We can't see because we're blinded by our self-centeredness. And we stumble along in drunken stupor because we do not know how to walk in the majesty and the dignity of one of God's children. And so when I gather up in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm assured that the lame do walk, and the blind do see, and the deaf do hear. And I'm positive, because I know a lot of you, that the good news is being spread. And the good news of recovery, the good news of sobriety, without the addition of anything else, is a way of life beyond despair. And so till God holds you in the palm of his hand, may he bless you and keep you, and I thank you for having me here. Good night.